but about our connection to each other and to country, and the old ways of doing things and the new ways of doing things. So Auntie Kerrie's going to share a little bit about some of her experiences and her belief in connection to country and where that comes from and what we can all learn from it. And we'll just have a bit of a yarn for 10 minutes or so. If you can smell a smell of fresh bread, that's because we've got 2 bread makers out there cooking us a loaf of bread with Mitchell grass in it. So it should come out halfway through the presentation and you'll get to try a very, very small piece, each, but yeah, we'll cut it up by the end of the presentation. So maybe we can sit down here, we'll have a bit of a yarn together. So Kerrie, do you want to just open by speaking a little bit about your business and how that evolved? So you can see Kerrie's, we all wear multiple hats. I'm sure everyone in this room is volunteers. We all wear multiple hats in different organisations. So Kerrie, in addition to working for the University of Sydney, also runs her own bush tucker tour group up in Moree. So Auntie, did you want to talk a little bit about your business and how that started?
Yes. So how that come around, Yinarr-ma, it started when I've been with the university for 3 years, but my journey started when I was 6. I remember being a little girl down at the bottom mission in Moree, and just the smells in my natural surroundings was always embedded in me. I did was a technician on other crops all my life, all my growing up years. The cotton was a big part in Moree. I've gone to know lots of things with cotton. Also with the wheat that was there, and also I'd done just the normal vegetables. With a a grape vineyard for 15 years. Practically know how to grow a grape vineyard from scratch, which I'm so fortunate, to know all these things. So I wanted to go and learn more about plants to keep the flow of things happening. And I met a guy named Paul Moxon that was at TAFE Moree, and he was teaching land management, horticulture with plants. And and the native plants. And yeah, I felt the importance of, it just hit me straight away, because it's got the same name as me, as an Aboriginal woman. And I felt it. So from there, I seen that knowledge needs to be heard. So going out into the unknowing, but I knew it was the rightful thing to do, I just stepped out with Yinarr-ma bush tucker tours. With 2 legs and a backpack along the Mehi River pathway, I conducted my little tours. And I was overwhelming of how many people didn't know about native foods. So I thought I was a little bit relaxed then, and I took the tour a little bit, a bit casual, and then it would become into just a casual walk along the Mehi River, starting from the Tourist Information Centre, going along, leading up to the Botanical Gardens, where I'm a part of with the friends in the Botanical Gardens, and just talking about native species along the way, whether it's plants, trees, seeds, and materials, and the stories that went with them. And it become, people just generally wanted to know, and so I was happy to offer that little casual walk to show them. And then I had about 70 services probably 20 organisations. Yeah, and so they learn just a little bit more of the way the old people, the system that they had back in the beginning. I mean, we all get opportunities and privileges, and it was nice to have an opportunity to express that. And you know, we're making bread. You know, the sky's the limit. So you know, there's opportunities. Our native grasslands, they heal a lot of things. People, country, animals, waterways. So there was a long line of people that I sort of engaged with, which for me, it was like, wow, it was really nice to know that, you know. I felt the 3 A's, you know, showing awareness, and people are actually accepting it, and therefore in return, we walk away appreciated. And for me, that's healing. It's powerful, and not just for myself, but for my people at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And so you're talking about the 3 A's of awareness, acceptance, and appreciation, right? Mm-hmm. So what have you found about the connection that you have between what you do at work and your community?
So what I do at work is what I do at home. It's the importance of it, to see it take to getting to know it, you know, getting to know it, feel it, touch it, smell it, know it, is one thing. For an Aboriginal woman like myself, it's my identity, it's my backbone to my livelihood, it's who I am, it's my culture, heritage. But taking it to another level, you know, it's pretty special, eh? So, and I'm so much appreciated that people can come along and see that, and then in return, yeah, appreciate it. So, it's very important for all the community, and I've engaged with just about every one of them. Because they were all trying to find solutions and answers to health and well-being. And the skills and the knowledge that the native grains do, they do exactly that.
Yeah, because it's more than a job. When you understand the plants that are around you, it becomes part of your life, right? And I remember you tell stories, I've seen it when I've been walking with you down the street, people yell out, Auntie Kerrie, Auntie Kerrie, and you say, come on, and you take them down the river, or give them an opportunity to try or taste test something that's in the park or whatever, and really help them to understand what they're surrounded by. So what does it mean as an Aboriginal person to be connected to country? And then for non-Aboriginal people, what do you think they could do to also find that connection?
Okay, I thought I answered that one, but so for an Aboriginal person to connect to country, it's just the way it. If you're not connected to country, and as an Aboriginal person, you're lost. It's so important that we are connected to country. It does a lot more for us than just it's our culture, heritage, it's tradition. You know, to see something amazing come from there, and people liking it, and it could be restaurant foods. You know, that's you know, I found like a place of belonging, like acceptancy. It's, you know, healthy food, and it come from a place where I'm from. And showing that in my tours, so I get all range of people that comes. I've got Qantas pulling up, and people just generally would like, you know, to know about it. So if I can, and I have been given that opportunity to know it. by coming along and engaging in a little walk, casual walk along the Mehi River pathway.
So what we might do now is we'll show some slides of some of the plants. I'm sure many of you are aware of native foods and various species that grow on your properties and in your country. What we're going to focus on today are the grains. So probably, there we go. And not many people realise this, but a lot of Indigenous people, it depends what sort of landscape you're from, but ate the grains that they grew naturally on their country, just like cultures all over the world have done for thousands of years. So wheat is a grass, rice is a grass, sorghum is a grass, teff is a grass, and then many of the other species that we eat are domesticated out of grasslands. So a lot of the legumes, they're all annual legumes, canola, they're field type plants. So that's why we titled our talk Field to Food, because they all came from a field. Doesn't matter what culture you're from, they come from a field. And they're the backbone of what we eat. They're usually bulk carbohydrate sources. And for Indigenous people, for thousands of years, it was the same. We're going to focus on 7 of the grasses and 3 of the herbaceous plants from Gomeroi country. And I know there's some people from up in the hills as well, so there's a few species that are common to both. But we do want to let you know, and you probably also know, that other species that weren't from grassland, some of the shrubs and trees, also produce edible seeds that were ground into a flour and eaten the same way. We're not going to talk about native rice or native woolly bark because they're from other landscapes. But we do want to just remind people that this isn't just about a commodity. So we are going to talk about the grains going forward for the rest of the talk, but please remember, these are very special grains. And Kerrie touched on there that it's not just about the economics, it's a socio-economic challenge, but also a socio-economic solution, and it's holistic. And I feel like I'm amongst friends when I say things like this. You all get it. You all get that farming's not just about a commodity, otherwise you wouldn't be involved in landcare. So just remember that as we share some knowledge, which isn't just our knowledge, it's thousands of years old knowledge. Did you want to add anything before we start on the Mitchell grass?
Oh no, that's right. We can start on the Mitchell.
Okay. So the content of the rest of the slides is going to be available. AgriFutures is helping produce this booklet. It's just going through the last touches of its typesetting or whatnot. You'll be able to see these things, as well as some recipes, as well as some quotes from Indigenous people, and all this content from the booklet. In a month or so, it'll be up on the website. So what we're going to do is go through the species one by one and talk about what they're used for and where they come from. We had Mitchell grass first up because this is one of the more significant species from Gomeroi country. Very deep-rooted perennial, quite distinctive. If you manage your country well, it's one of the native perennials on the black soil plains that will be predominant. But most people don't realise how small the seed is. So if you look up in that top right-hand corner, that's the size of the seed relative to the floret that it comes from. And people might look at that and think, oh my goodness, how can you actually make a loaf of bread out of that? But it is quite a prolific seeder. And as long as you can get it out of its husk, you'll be fine. And we've figured that the best way to get it out of its husk isn't actually in a threshing machine. So most commercial crops would be harvested with a big front, and it will go through what's called a drum-based thresher, which is just a big rotating set of paddles, and it rubs the grain out of its husk. Doesn't work for Mitchell grass, so you can see that seed is so small relative to the husk. You can't rub it out, the husk's just kind of spongy and the seed doesn't come out of them. You chop them open. So there's no machine that currently can do this, but the Indigenous women and other people did it for thousands and thousands of years on grindstones and using rocks in the ground. So it's still possible. Just need some clever engineers to try and figure out a way to make it work at the scale that we need to for modern markets. But in terms of its nutritional content, this is a really incredible species. It has a similar protein content to a legume. So people would eat legume as a protein source, but they wouldn't go normally eat a grain, a grass grain like a wheat or a rice. But this grass produces as much protein in its grain as a legume. Similar to chickpeas or faba beans. Really incredible. Quite a mild for the native grass species, it's a fairly mild flavour, so it lends itself really well to any sort of food. It's very high in protein, so it has a really good texture as well. And you get to try some at the end of the presentation. Did you want to add anything on the Mitchell grass? And then we'll move on to native millet.
The Gomeroi name is Gunalei.
Yep.
And Gunalei is healthy community. It's a community grass.
You can do the native millet if you'd like.
Okay, the next one is native millet, which is Pandicum decompositum, and the Gomeroi name is
Goolie.
Goolie. Yeah, so it's just grows on like a dead stick branch, but it's got a lot of little seeds. So they grow across our grasslands. I personally collect them and I put bread on the table for the night. So you can put bread on the table, even if it's just one person collecting. And that's very high in fibre. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the seed size up there, similar size to the Mitchell, but much easier to get out of its husk. It basically falls out of its outer husk all on its own. That black or the brown bit is actually its husk, but as we believe from our research and also from tasting it ourselves, it seems to be included in as part of the food historically and okay to include as part of the food today. It's just very high in fibre. So you can leave that inner husk on. But if you take it off, the seed's that kind of yellowy colour. Like Arnie said, it's very high in fibre. We kind of think this was more of the everyday type bread for Indigenous people. You can get multiple harvests off the plant over the summer period. Stores very well, very easy to thresh. So between Mitchell grass and this grass, they're the two more common ones from Gomeroi country, which is kind of Inverell-ish, west to Walgett-ish. And Boggabilla, yep. So I'll do this species, then I'll pass back to Kerrie for the next one. Okay. This one's summer armgrass or armgrass millet. If you know Cole Seiss, this is one of the ones that he has on his property. And he actually recommended this one that we should try. And he recommended 3, I think. We tried 3, and this was the one that came up the best. And we did some subsequent research and found that Indigenous people in Central Australia eat a very similar species. So it's very possible that this species was one of the ones consumed around here. The historical records are very scant and very hard to find, and sadly that knowledge has been lost over the last few decades. And so it's very hard to know exactly which were the main species people used to eat. Mitchell grass and native millet come up frequently. Gunalei and Goolie is a language from around here. But we think this one would have been one of the ones as well. It has a slightly bigger seed than native millet. It's a fairly close relative of native millet in terms of genetics. To get this one out of the husk, stone seems to be the best strategy. So 3 different grasses we've done so far, they need 3 different processing methods. And this is one of the reasons why it's so hard to commercialise this industry, because it's just needs very specific processing. These are not domesticated at all. They need a lot of hand care to get them through. But the flower is quite aromatic of this species compared to the others. I think it has a bit of a florally kind of taste and aroma, which makes it really special and quite beautiful. It's quite healthy, like all of them are. Slightly greenish colour to the seed even when it's ripe. So that means the flower has a slightly greenish tinge.
So this one is button grass, the Taman radulens.
Nice.
So this little grass species just grows very low to the ground, and it's ready when the florets go brown, and they sort of jump when you go to reach down for them. But they got a little seed, and with the nutrients, they're just full of minerals. So that's what they're analysed as. So be the first food that the baby eats. And so, yeah, we also thresh those and winnow them, and we got a little machine that it's like a little vacuum. It separates the seed from the trash, and then once we get the seed, we just put it through the mill. And we can also add it to flour or making a thick agency or something.
How easy is this one to thresh compared to the others you work with?
Oh, this one's really easy to thresh, even though the seed's very tiny. It's sort of like falls out. So, yeah, the heat just falls out, falls into your hands, and yeah, it's a pretty easy one.
Okay. So one for the people that live a bit further east. I'm sure you're all familiar with microlina. Beautiful looking grass, pretty good cattle feed, and quite a prolific seeder. The seed on this one's long and shaped like that, so that's the floret, and then that's the seed itself. So it's not too much smaller than its actual floret. But because it's long shaped, it's actually quite hard to thresh because it snaps. It snaps really easily in the threshing machine, so you've got to be really delicate with it. So yes, it's possible to do it by machine, but sort of you really got to get the settings right, and you've really got to make sure that the glooms and the lemon and the palea are at the right moisture content. So if it's too damp, you'll have to leave it in the thresher for too long and it will snap too much. But very healthy, and there's a bit more research done on this species than the other native grains because of its commercial potential. So over the last decade or so, several universities have engaged in research with this species. What we're really keen on is making sure that we don't just commercialise this without the connection to country and the people of the country that it comes from. So there's some scones that got made with it. When we've eaten it, you can use it with anything. I personally find it tends to lend itself well to sweet type foods.
Yeah.
So yeah, biscuits and like fruit bread. We made a loaf of fruit bread with some of this species. It was really, really nice.
Oh, okay. So we got the tall oat grass, Thelmelina avicea. So this one is kind of like the kangaroo. Threshing this one I had my head scratching because like kangaroo grass, it grows on all levels. That's how our kangaroo grass grows here. There's a bit of fiddly work with this one. There's not really much machinery, tooly to have the process where you can just want to get seed there and trash there. It still needs, because it's got a lot of different layers, and it's just a little bit difficult in threshing. So that would have been one the old people would have done by hand.
Oh, we don't have the nutrition.
But it's a beautiful seed, and they like grains of rice. Again, nice to eat, pleasant to eat. Do you want to add anything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The reason we don't have the nutritional information for this one in the booklet is we've found it really hard to get enough naked seed to send for nutritional tests. The seed's quite large compared to other native grains, bigger than weeping grass, and it's really soft. There's some seed collectors in the room here. I would love to hear your feedback on collecting seed from this species because it's really common to find it produces florets, but the florets are empty. So we've collected big bundles of the tillers from the field and then gone to find those sunset coloured grains inside, and 80% of the florets or even more are empty. And kangaroo grass can be similar, so it looks like it's producing lots of grain, and then you go and find it actually doesn't have seed in it. And we're not sure why. We've talked to a few seed collectors. We've found little bugs inside them. We think that larvae are eating the grains because they're nice and big and soft. We don't know if those larvae are natives or if they're native but the predator's missing and so they're prolific in the landscape. Because there's lots of evidence of both this species and kangaroo grass as being prolific across the landscape and managed by Indigenous people, most likely for food purposes. But we can't see any way that this species would have been eaten, at least not in its current form, even though it's got big grain. There's just not enough of it on each plant to make it worthwhile. And the effort you have to go to get it out of its husk is ridiculous. So yeah, interesting. I don't want to be controversial and say kangaroo grass wasn't eaten by Indigenous people. And definitely in different parts of the country there would have been a different story. But around a Gomeroi country, at the moment, kangaroo grass is not a target for the native grains industry. There's just not enough grain. Don't know why. Would love to hear some feedback from anyone that knows anything about the biology of kangaroo grass or tall oak grass. Because they're both Themata species, if you missed that. So this is Themata abenacea and the other one, kangaroo grass, is Themata triandra. So we'll move away from the grasses. We'll just do a couple more species, then we'll do a taste test. Oh, is it my turn? My turn. Saltbush, and most of you would know that this is edible. Sheep can eat it, cattle can eat it, humans can eat the leaves as well. Goes quite well in a salad. What we want to talk about here is the grain. So the seed itself is much, much smaller than the capsule that it's inside. Again, that's really common. But you can still eat these capsules. And what we normally do is just easier not to remove the seed. You just leave the capsule on it and roast the whole thing and use it as a very small proportion as the total flour. So unlike something like Mitchell grass or native millet where you could blend it with wheat at quite a high proportion, this one you use more as a flavouring, like a seasoning, less than a base flour. But you still mix it in with the base flour. And savoury goes really well in a pizza base. And when we do workshops in the high school, this is the classic one. We do make pizza with the kids and incorporate it into the pizza base. Don't shoot us when we say you should eat pigweed.
So this is another favourite one of Angela's. But yeah, it's a plant species that's been here for a long time. But it's also native all over the world. Other countries do cook with it. And I've also cooked with it. Everything's on the plant's edible, even the seeds. The seeds are about full of omega-3 oils, very good oils. The plant itself, so if the sun was coming up in the east and then it was just going straight over there, I'll go back to that plant and I'll eat it because the sun just done something to the sugars and it tastes nicer. Yeah, it's when it's heated up, it's a pleasant. Have it in salads, stir fries.
The Kamilarori word.
So we call this one in Gomeroi, Kamilarori is damu. It's a damu. And so you can see in the little cupcakes, we use them as poppy seeds too. Just a very healthy little grain. Do you want to speak?
Can I get a poll from the audience? Who's eaten pigweed before? Oh, awesome. Probably about a third of the room. Fantastic. I'm amongst friends then. We love this species. We do. So obviously we're here to talk about the grain side of it today, but like Arnie said, you can eat all the plant. The grain's really small, but it's a super prolific seeder. So I've done, and again, don't shoot me, some yield tests on this species in my backyard, getting about 60 kilos of seed per hectare if I was going to extrapolate it. So that's, for a tiny, tiny little plant, the harvest index on that is amazing. But again, I'm not suggesting we should plant a hectare of pigweed. I would be in big trouble if I went that far. But I am saying, like we said at the start of the presentation, be aware of the foods around you, be aware of your surroundings, be connected to country, and don't just assume anything. Really listen to country and listen to the people from the country. And whether you're Indigenous or not, listen to the people that understand that country. Nothing's a waste. Nothing's a waste. A weed is just a weed in the eye of the beholder, right? I think this is the last one, and you'd all be familiar with this species, Lomandra. Did you know that the seed is edible off this species? It does require a little bit of processing, which I won't go through today. So don't just go and eat it off the plant in your front yard or down the highway tomorrow. But this is a very useful plant and had multiple uses: for food, for fibres, for utensils, and for the grain. It's got a very large grain, which is really easy to get out of its husk, and it's delicious. There's some flatbreads we made, and we just slathered them with quandong jam, and it was absolutely delicious. Quite healthy for you, high in protein, not quite as high in minerals as some of the others. So again, it's got a fairly neutral taste. That's good. That's it for the species we're going to talk about today. And if you want more information from the university's website, we've gone to a lot of effort to make sure there's a lot of publicly accessible stuff on there, including stuff for schools right through to industry.